Emily Johnson. I'm a senior and I am a double major with economics and political science, and I studied in Freiburg and Breisgau in Germany.
Okay, I'm Unique Sykes. I'm a senior in class of 2018. I'm an environmental studies major, and I studied for the full academic year. The fall was in Tanzania, and the spring was in Washington, D.C.
Sure. I'm Azadeh Miraslani. I studied abroad in Tours, France. I am a senior. I'm graduating class of 2018, and my majors are international relations and French.
So being a double major, it's difficult to get all the requirements, but this program was called the European Union, which allowed me to take poli-sci courses, econ courses, and that also have the dynamic of German, which I am applying for, so that was a definite plus.
I wanted to become more fluent in French, so I wanted to go to somewhere where all my classes would be French, and I would be in a homestay where my family only spoke French, so it really forced me to learn French more easily and forced me to use my conversation, which at Bucknell we don't really do too much of that in classes, so it was really helpful to go to that.
It's so hard when people ask how your experience was, because there's so many different aspects of it that you want to share with them. And so usually I just end up saying, oh, it was great, and just leave it at that. But if I go into more detail, I mean, it's probably like the best experience of my life. Culturally, just becoming more independent. I learned how to be an individual, truly in the sense of I had to speak a different language. I had to buy my own groceries. Like I had to manage my own money. I had to fill out forms. I had to do all of these certain things. And just it taught you so much about your life. So I think if I could go into
My study abroad experience was a learning experience. I learned about myself emotionally, academically, and professionally. Studying abroad in Tanzania, I learned that I enjoy learning about animals. I enjoy doing field research, but that wasn't what I was passionate about. I learned about the environment and how it is difficult for humans and nature to coexist. And so I translated that passion, that interest into my study abroad, or my domestic abroad experience in DC, where I was studying sustainable development, and I was able to give an interest to learning about how other countries have difficulty developing because of obviously colonial structures, just a lot of difficulty. In DC, I was able to translate that to, learning more about how the U.S. has difficulties in terms of nature and people. Like, you would describe the U.S. as a developing nation, whereas you don't really necessarily consider the U.S. having nature. But there are other ways to describe nature that affects people, like for example, air pollution. Air pollution affects neighborhoods, and those neighborhoods, the people who live in those neighborhoods are affected by that through their health, and this creates environmental justice communities. And so having the interest of going from learning about animals and the environment and people in Tanzania, I was able to translate that to America, and I was able to translate my interest in the coexistence of animals, nature, and people to the U.S., whereas there are policies and structures in place that don't allow people to have the same environmental rights as others.
When I came back, I think the biggest thing I would talk about would be my homestay experience, just because I had a really good relationship with my family, and they even went away one weekend and I took care of their dog and stuff like that, which was really fun. And then also definitely the friends I made while I was abroad. I didn't go with anyone that I knew at Bucknell necessarily, but now 3 of them I consider my best friends back on campus, because you just spend so much time with them and are thrown in situations that you would never experience at Bucknell, so you bond like really quickly with them, which is really nice.
So in Tanzania, we camped. I had to bring my own tent. I rented it from OEL, and I had my own tent, my own sleeping bag, my own like backpack, my hiking backpack, and that was my room and board for 2 whole months. And then when I did my research project, I was able to rent a house for a month and just stay there. So room and board was like maybe like $300 compared to like Bucknell. In DC, I was able to find an apartment just near American University, and I just lived with people who were in the same program that I was in. So it was pretty like tight-knit community in both, whereas we were camping 10 tents and then living in the same apartment.
Yeah, so everyone was with a homestay, so we were all with host families, and all of us were like within like the same neighborhood, which was really nice, and our host families all knew each other too. So there was like one dinner we had with all our host families, which was nice at the end of the semester. But I like had my own room in my homestay and like basically my own floor, which was really nice, and they're really accommodating and gave me like free breakfast and dinner like every day, which was really nice too, and like definitely saved a lot of money compared to like other people, which was really nice.
I had a flat, which was me and 5 other Germans that were in Freiburg Universität, and that was very different than what I was used to, also because it was called a flat and not an apartment. But so the 5 of them were very strict about certain things, but that was something that I actually came to love, because they had this thing called a putzplan, which was a cleaning plan, and it just taught me a lot about their culture and the way like they want things done and very specific individual things. But overall, I had a great living experience, and I got to speak German in the process, and they taught me so many things that I wouldn't have seen if I lived by myself or with other Americans.
I probably would have chosen to live with French students, just because I was going there to like learn how to speak French, and I think if I was with American students, I probably would have just ended up speaking English the whole time, which defeats the purpose. So yeah, definitely would have just like chose some kind of like apartment or dorm style that had like international students as well.
I think I could have lived on my own, but I thought that it would be beneficial to live with other Germans, so that's what I chose. But I think there's single housing, and you can also have a roommate that I was in the program. So that kind of was nice for some people because they had their own like a little bondage towards home there.
The benefit of camping was being able to feel comfortable with the natural spaces that we were in. Like I could walk out of my tent and I could just sit there and watch elephants graze. I could watch impala be chased by a lion. I could sit there and just be consumed by the natural areas. A hindrance, though, would be being consistently dirty. There were showers, kind of. We would take bucket showers, but it was not the same as a regular shower. And for DC, I don't think there were any like benefits or hindrances, but it was nice being able to live in the city, whereas like Bucknell is obviously like a more rural area.
So when I arrived in France, I was there, I think, January 4th, so it's still like pretty new and everything, and Trump hadn't even been inaugurated yet. And I remember when someone would like detect the slightest American accent, they would ask me about like Trump like right away and like American politics. So I found myself having to explain the Electoral College in French, which was pretty difficult, and say like how the US does not all support like the decisions that the president has put forth to like the rest of the population. So I did find myself like defending the US and like trying to tell people like we're not all for these terrible things that are gonna happen and stuff like that. So yeah.
So a lot of times the question was, what do you think of Trump? I think I got that all of the time. And one thing that I knew that I needed to do was still represent my country in a respectful manner. So I wouldn't say anything negative if I didn't need to. So a diplomatic response was always what I gave, just because you don't want to slam your own country. You don't want to say like things aren't the best at home, or I don't believe in the political circumstances. You want to be as optimistic as you can, and so that was kind of the response I would give whenever asked, "What do you think of Trump?" Well, I'm hopeful for the future. I hope that he will do the best that he can with the given situation, and something like that. And so then they usually say, okay, yeah, that's good. And instead leave it at that, instead of get into the political turmoil and the political circumstances that were going on.
So in November, when the elections were happening, it was actually during my research project, so I was alone. But we did have a group chat and we were talking about it, and it was morning for us, I believe. And we just couldn't necessarily believe what was happening, because we were so disconnected and from I guess watching the news, and we would go find on Facebook feeds and Twitter, because we didn't necessarily have news outlets at the time, at least me in particular. But it was interesting saying that I was American, especially a Black American, because people would necessarily, I don't know, respect me. It was more of they would make fun of me for actually being American. He was just wow, look what happened. I'm really sorry. You know what I mean? But also it was more of wow, what do you actually think about what's going on? Let me learn from your perspective. There's an actual American citizen here. Let me learn about this perspective from someone that I'm finally meeting from America. So there was those two different interactions I had. They're either making fun of me or they're actually trying to learn. But it was very interesting because when we had this interview session with a couple elder men from tribes, we were trying to learn about gender roles within indigenous communities. We did bring up this was before the election happened. We did bring up Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, and some of the men were women just can't be leaders. They don't have the mental capacity to lead. And we're just yikes.
Discussions.
I found it better to engage myself just because, we're going there to learn about French politics and culture and stuff, and I'm sure French are just as interested in learning about American politics and things like that. So I think it has to be a two-way street. They're giving you information, so you need to give it back and kind of be informative to them as they're being to you.
Discussions.
I think it was a good time to actually insert myself in political discussions, because when will I ever have the chance to talk about politics with someone who I guess is an outsider to American politics, whereas I have to live it every day, and on a different continent learning about it, and vice versa for me. I'm learning about Tanzanian government and being around Tanzanians. So I think it was a great time to actually have these debates, because you're coming from a whole different perspective than I am. So it was just it was a lot of intellectual conversations about politics and international aids, especially because the government was trying to take, one of the things for Trump was taking away international aid. So that was a big discussion.
I think just to be diplomatic, say something that isn't going to negatively influence your home country, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, so we had a lot of domestic trips we had to do, which were really easy, especially because of the train is like super cheap when you can get a special like discount card in France. If you're under like 25, all the tickets are like discounted, which is really nice. And then internationally, I traveled to 5 different countries while I was abroad because we had a lot of weeks of vacation. And I think just like advice with that is make sure like you're aware like where your housing situation is like relative to the countries you're studying like abroad, like going abroad too. And then also like don't be afraid to use like the cheap airlines, even though like you might think it's like shady, like they're all pretty much fine. And make sure like always traveling with people and like with a solid group because you're in a new place, new environment, stuff like that.
Well, for Europe, get used to traveling on buses and public transportation. Definitely something that I was not used to. The tram, the concept of a tram, a clean one, was something very new to me. And I think if I had any suggestions for traveling, be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because you're going to come across a lot of people speaking different languages. They're going to come up to you and ask in that language if you speak that language, and you will have to decipher yourself out of it if you don't know the language, or say what you can if you do. So just be comfortable with those situations and make the best of it. And also traveling, just be aware of the cultural norms and a lot of the things that you're going to be encountering. Because not every country is the same, and you learn that very quickly.
Definitely like having like I had my host parents like information with me at all times, so like they're definitely someone I could utilize more than like my own family because they're a lot closer. And then also like your program director, advisor, or someone like that, like that's a resource you should be using just because they know more about the area than you do. So like I definitely utilized them while I was abroad, even when I like was studying. I think when I was studying, when I traveled to like Spain or something, I had a question and I'd contacted like our advisor that was there, and he was really helpful in certain situations like that. And just like always remember to have like your passport and things like that, because my friend did lose hers unfortunately. So just make sure you have everything together, and I would recommend getting like a little trifold where you can keep like your wallet, passport, and like any other necessary like travel documents with you. So
I always liked to print out directions or something ahead of time, so that in the case that your phone, you never know what's going to happen. In case the phone gets broken, lost, water damage, you never know. Have an actual physical copy that'll get you somewhere. You never needed more than 2 different outfits to change into for weekend or day trips, especially not day trips. So I guess just less clothing. That'd be really it. Pack light.
I brought my camera, but I didn't really utilize it just because I didn't want to hold that many things while I was traveling, and I ended up not bringing it out even like towards the end. Like I recommend just like using your phone if you have like a good camera phone, just because when you do have too many things, I think like you're a target for like pickpocketers and stuff like that. So really only like bring the essentials when like you're walking around and stuff. I think the biggest thing I learned is how to like navigate public transportation, especially in countries where they didn't speak French or English, like traveling in like the Netherlands, for example, or Denmark. Like I don't speak Dutch or Danish, so like having to navigate like the subway system was definitely something new. But it definitely gave me more confidence working in the city this summer, like navigating those like the subway system in New York. So definitely like just learning how to get around the city without knowing the language or using your phone and stuff. I am lactose intolerant, so being in France definitely was like an adjustment just because like cheese is everywhere. So I kind of had to like tell my host family like I can't eat that or like things like that, and they were pretty accommodating. And also just different trips and stuff like that you had to adjust, but otherwise it was pretty easy. Like I was lucky that I had a host family, so all my meals were like provided for me, and like that definitely helped with like cost stuff too, just because you don't have like the bison available or like Panera, stuff like that. So definitely it was nice like having meals provided, and then I suggest like finding a few places within like your city that you're studying abroad that are like cheap, or like going to the grocery store.
Well, I had to make most of my food, so that was something to get used to, but I actually came to love, and now I love to cook and bake and everything, and so that's really great. But for the most part, the EU has a lot of great regulations and healthy food that you wouldn't necessarily find in the US at such an affordable price. So that was something that I really enjoyed, and also I didn't feel so unhealthy because most of the things had to be healthy in order to be put on the market. So just a side note.
I would say probably like my lunch every day was around like €7 or something, and that was like 5 days out of the week. So probably like 30 to 40 euros. So it really wasn't bad considering I didn't have to pay for breakfast or dinner, and then could be more typically if I wanted like a little snack throughout the day or something.
I think I calculated at one point, honestly, only €50, and I was making my food. And I think I would eat out for probably 4 additional meals during the week. So by the end, you would never spend more than €80, I think, on food for the week.
So, and then what tips would you give concerning eating abroad?
You don't have to tip as much as we do in the US. That was something that we really enjoyed, actually. 10% is usually the standard, and that was something that I had to get used to. And also, in the flip side, something that I had to get used to back here, because you had to tip 20%, and you're so used to tipping 10 or less. Especially because college students, they recognize that you don't have a job yet, and so they understand if you're not giving them a full tip or like the standard, because they're also getting a better wage than we do in the US, which is something that we don't recognize. So eating out is just a little different dynamic, and they're not as friendly to you, I guess. They're not coming up asking, do you need water refill, do you need anything, because they know that they're not going to get a big tip, and they're just doing their job, which is just the standard ordering and bring you the food. So you have to usher to them to bring the food to you, or even get the check. And so they'll let you sit there for maybe like 3 hours if you really wanted to, and they'll never come up to you and pester you to tell you to leave. There are a lot less items to purchase at a grocery store in all of Europe. So it's more, you'll go to the store and there'll be maybe 2 different options of something that you want to buy, not 10 different items that are the same exact thing, just different brands. So that was something. They're also much smaller, and I always loved to go to Aldi because it was cheaper and it was really healthy vegetables, meats, everything. And in the US, I don't think we have that concept of Aldi, but in Germany, it was something that you relied on just to get the bare essentials.
So definitely like the biggest thing is produce. Like you have to weigh it before you go to the counter and get like a price tag on it. And the first time I went, I forgot to weigh it, and the lady looked at me like I was crazy. And like she helped me out and stuff, but it was pretty embarrassing because there was a really long line, and they had to bring all my produce back and like type it in manually, and French people were not really happy with me, but that was like the only thing that was like super different. Otherwise, like it's pretty much like a regular grocery store. I would say like definitely don't hold back on eating anything because you're only abroad once, but like definitely after a while cut back on the pastries because you'll start feeling it. But I wouldn't say like you're exploring like a new culture, like new cities, like definitely taste the food that's local to that region and let yourself like get immersed, because food's like always a huge part of people's culture. Yeah, so all my classes only met once a week, but they're for like 2 or 3 hours a week, and they're all lectures, which was definitely different than Bucknell because I feel like we do a lot of like class-based discussion or like group discussion or group work and stuff. So that was definitely an adjustment, especially listening to a French lecture like in French for like 3 hours. So that was like a huge adjustment for me. And then also we only had a final exam at the end of the semester and not like little assignments. So you kind of had to like prepare for the entire semester just for like one exam because that was what your entire grade was based on. And that was like the biggest adjustment for me, I think. And then also just having like online classes be in French, I had to take notes in French. So that definitely helped with like my conversation, but it was like a lot to adjust like the first 2 weeks and stuff.
So my program was facilitated by IES, and they tried their best to keep it as close to a US standard of schooling, because German schooling would be you just study, the professor lectures, you ask questions, you don't really take exams, you don't do anything until the very end of the semester, and then you would have this big paper or something that you had to hand in. So they wanted to keep it a US, and you have quizzes, you have papers, you have this, you have that, midterm finals, all of those different dynamics. So I would say it was very similar to schooling here. My program was also academically more difficult than I expected it to be, which I'm not saying is a bad thing. I think that was a good thing. But it definitely challenged me at times because I didn't know the European Union. I didn't come in with that knowledge, so it was kind of starting from square one.
Yeah, so none of the professors in the university I was at actually had like office hours, or an office in the university for a professor was very uncommon. So if you had any questions, I would typically just ask like other French students, because the professors don't really have the same relationship like you have with professors at Bucknell that like encourage interaction outside the classroom, which was definitely hard if I didn't understand like a concept during class because I couldn't really ask my professor. I would say like that was the biggest difference, like 100%.
I think it depended on the professor that you had. So I had one professor from Bulgaria, I had one professor from Germany, one from Greece, and one from another Eastern European country that I can't remember specifically what it was. But each one kind of had their own different teaching style. It's just how we have in the US also. But something that I had to get used to was there's kind of more relations with them. You can go out and get a drink. That's completely normal. Like after class, let's go get a beer and go to a beer garden and spend time and talk. And it was more social. Which here I feel like there's a definite divide between your professors and you keep it professional. But there. There was less than here, homework-wise, but I know that I still had reading just about every single night. Some people in the program, I mean, depends, do you do it, do you not, but if you wanted to do well in the classes, you had to do readings.
My favorite memory, I won't say it's my favorite, but I think this is the memory that sticks out the most, is when we were in Serengeti National Park. So we camped in national parks, and for some reason all the campsites are always next to lions' dens. And in Serengeti, the lion's den was like kind of like under, like at the bottom of the hill, and at this night there's, I guess, hyenas that were bothering the lions, and there were also like a herd of zebras. And there was also buffalo. So everything was going on at this one night, and I guess the hyenas or the buffalo, they were just getting annoyed. And so the buffalo charged zebras, and so the zebras came running through our campsite, and so everyone just ran before they could get trampled. So people were like jumping on top of tents, they were just running everywhere. So I think that was the best memory, my favorite memory.
I think my favorite memory was definitely going to Barcelona with like me and three of my really good friends, and one of my best friends was studying abroad in Barcelona, and she like walked us up this like really cool hike that had an entire view of the city, and we watched the sunset like over the city, and like cracked open a bottle of like champagne and just like watched with like all these other like Barcelona people, and like it was just really nice because we just stayed up there for like 3 hours and like watched the sunset, and like people were playing guitar and stuff up there. So it was like really authentic and just like really fun.